this computer and record to cloud. Okay. I think we're good. And we'll get started now. Now we got the right slides up. I'm not going to say the prayer again, but we did pray. No one was here, but we prayed. So let's get started. Save a little time here. Diane, would you go ahead and pray?
Ready? Okay. 5. The planetary series of mortals. It will be somewhat difficult to make an adequate portrayal of the planetary series of mortals because you know so little about them, and because there are so many variations. Mortal creatures may, however, be studied from numerous viewpoints, among which are the following. 1. Adjustment to planetary environment. 2. Brain type series. 3. Spirit reception series. 4. Planetary mortal epics. 5. Creature kinship serials. 6. Adjuster fusion series. 7. Techniques of terrestrial escape.
You're muted, Roger.
Oh my, you're muted.
You mute yourself, dear. Yeah, okay. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm rattled. Let's try this again. Switch my brain from
Okay.
adjusters to planetary series of mortals. Okay, here we go. What we're going to talk about tonight is the different types of mortals on the different planets. Okay, and the way they look at it in the super universe is like this. All right, there's mortals that are adjusted for the environment. There's three different brain type of mortals, and there's different spirit reception mortals. In that case, that includes those that are spirit fused, sun fuse, or adjuster fuse, right? And then there's different mortal epics. For every planet, we have multiple epics until we reach light and life. And that's what they're talking about there. So you may be born on a planet that's already reached light and life. Your life is going to be totally different than a planet that's very barbaric, right? Okay. And there's a creature kinship series, and we are part of the adjuster fusion series. And then the way that you escape in death differs from type of being to type of being. Okay, there's several ways you can escape the planet. In our world, you have to die. You can fuse with your adjuster and escape the planet that way, but you have to be on a very high level to be able to do that, right? All right, so Rodney, would you take the next one for us, please?
Yes. The inhabited spheres of the 7 super universes are people and mortals who simultaneously classify in some one or more categories of each of these 7 generalized classes of evolutionary creature life. But even these general classifications make no provision for such beings as midseniders, nor for certain other forms of intelligent life. The inhabited worlds, as they have been presented in these narratives, are people with evolutionary mortal creatures, but there are other life forms.
In other words, there's a lot of other life forms that are on these planets, and some of them are not evolutionary mortals. Okay, so there are planets that's populated with beings which are not mortals, and their purpose is totally different than ours. You follow me? one of these is the Midsiniders. We know that there is one planet in Nebadon that is what's called the Midsinite world. And Midsiniders are a totally different class of beings than mortals are, right? We know that Midsiniders are in between mortal and paradise type of beings, are kind of in between. And the Midsiniders are the same types of beings that are on Havona, right? All the billion worlds of Havona. So when we get to Havona and we start to deal with the beings of Havona in paradise, these are Midsinite type beings. Okay. So that's what they're talking about here. But most of the planets are populated by evolutionary will creatures, the normal people, just like we are, except they're different types. Okay. Let's see here. Next, Jane, would you take the next one?
Okay, 1. Adjustment to planetary environment. There are 3 general groups of inhabited worlds from the standpoint of the adjustment of creature life to the planetary environment. The normal adjustment group, the radical adjustment group, and the experimental group.
Okay, we talked about this a little bit last time, how there's 3 types of mortals populating these planets, and some of them have to be radically adjusted to be able to survive on the type of atmosphere and planet that they're born on. Okay, like the sub-breathers, the super breathers, those without atmosphere 100%, and then the aquatic beings on some of them. All right, so these would be considered the radical adjustment group, that they have to adjust the human body so that they can live a normal life. All right. And then they have a normal adjustment group, which is what they consider most of the planets are in this category, the normal adjustment group. But it's interesting that our planet are on the experimental group. So we've been adjusted in an experimental type way, and which makes us different. And there's only 1 out of every 10 planets that are included in this experimental group. Okay, which we are that type of being. So how this is different than other groups, we can't say for sure. It just depends on what kind of adjustments they had to do to us as an experimental planet, right?
Roger.
Right. Yeah.
It's interesting that our astronomers are looking for planets that are similar to ours for life.
Right.
And they have no idea about these other life forms.
Right. Yeah. Well, not only the other life forms, like the non-breathers and that sort of thing, but they don't know that every 10 planets they're going to come upon is going to be an experimental planet, right? So they won't be like us. They'll be totally different from us because they will be experimented on in a different way, right? So even though they're all experimental planets, they're not all going to be alike either, are they? So, it makes you wonder, wonder if they have, maybe they give some of them antennas to be, or something, like, what was that show that was on TV for the longest time? My Favorite Martian. Remember that? The guy had, anyway, so.
Good show.
Yeah, who knows what kind of changes they'll make. All right, Gary, would you take the next one?
Normal adjustments to planetary conditions follow the general physical patterns previously considered. The worlds of the non-breathers, typically the radical or extreme adjustments, but other types are also included in the group. Experimental worlds are usually ideally adapted to the typical life forms, and on these decimal planets, the life carriers attempt to produce beneficial variations in the standard life designs. Since your world is an experimental planet, it differs markedly from its sister spheres in Satania. Many forms of life have appeared on Urantia that are not found elsewhere. Likewise, are many common species absent from your planet.
Okay, so if your wife complains that your stomach's too big, you can always say, well, dear, we're an experimental planet. What can I say? Right? Who knows what we look like compared to other worlds?
You know, she
Uh,
may be asking you to experiment on how fast you can dump too.
that may be true. That may be very true. True.
Is that right, Jane? You're the only one woman here that can you, well, excuse me, Diane, I didn't mean to leave you out.
What's
It's okay. Uh,
I don't know.
Okay, let's go on to the next one. I'll read this one since there's only 5 of it. In the universe of Nebanon, all the life modification worlds are serially linked together and constitutes a special domain of universe affairs, which is given attention by designated administrators. And all of these experimental worlds are periodically inspected by a corps of universe directors whose chief is the veteran finalizer known in Satania as Tabamantia. Okay, so Tabamantia was one of the first finalizers from an experimental planet. So Tabamantia goes around and inspects these experimental worlds to make sure they keep within a certain range of allowability in the design of the people they come up with. Okay.
So Tabamancha's been here.
Yeah, she's actually there's another place in the book where it talks that she had just come. I was trying to remember where it was. I think it was in the Adam and Eve papers. She had just come before Adam and Eve arrived to do an inspection of Urantia. I think it was the Adam and Eve papers, if I remember correctly. Okay, yeah. Let's see here, Diane.
2. Brain type series. The one physical uniformity of mortals is the brain and nervous system. Nevertheless, there are 3 basic organizations of the brain mechanism: the 1, the 2, and the 3 brain types. Urantians are of the 2 brain type, somewhat more imaginative, adventurous, and philosophical than the 1 brain mortals, but somewhat less spiritual, ethical, and worshipful than the 3 brain orders. These brain differences characterize even the pre-human animal existences.
Okay, I always found this interesting because I've been reading this book for years and years and years, and I always wondered why they call this 2 brain. Is it because you have the cerebrum, which is divided into 2 sections, 2 different sides, right?
Mhm.
You also have a subbrain, which takes care of all the autonomic nervous systems, all the autonomic things that you do, like breathe, it takes care of your body functions and all this other stuff. You could call that the second brain, if you think about it. But brain makes you wonder if the 3-brained have 3 hemispheres in the top and then a second one, or if the 3-brain they're talking about is a different configuration completely with a subbrain that's much like ours. So, you could call us, in essence, 3-brain beings because of the 2 hemispheres, but that's not the way they look at it.
I think
No,
they look at
because
it
the
as,
animals have that the back too.
Yes, they
The
do.
animals have the third,
Right.
right?
So,
They're not upright, like they're not humans.
yeah.
I wonder if the third brain, that others that are more spiritual, it wouldn't, this is imagination, of course, and I'm all right. I'm okay to be imaginative
Yeah.
because they did call us somewhat more imaginative.
Uh-huh.
But it could be here what we call the third eye, which is the intuitiveness.
Well, it would be, if that would be the case, then they'd have a separate hemisphere in the front. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, their head
Yeah.
would definitely be different
Yeah.
to have, but because I don't know, doesn't the third make them more ethical and spiritual and
It
worshipful.
does, but
So it
let
may
me,
not take a lot of material. It
well,
may,
let me throw something else in there. They could have a two hemisphere brain like we do, and
Mhm,
then the subbrain, which is the autonomic nervous system, and then
mhm,
have another between the two, which is the more spiritual part. You see what I'm
right.
saying?
Yeah.
So which would make sense also. So they don't really explain in detail. So you could really kind of use your imagination and how that would work. And with the one-brained individual, they may have one hemisphere with the subbrain mixed in into just one big thing. You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So there's a lot of variations that this could be done. This is interesting because they go on to explain this a little bit more, which you could grab some things from this. So Jane, would you take this one?
From the two hemisphere type of the Urantia cerebral cortex, you can, by analogy, grasp something of the one brained type. The third brain of the three brained orders is best conceived as an evolvement of your lower or rudimentary form of brain, which is developed to the point where it functions chiefly in control of physical activities, leaving the two superior brains free for higher engagements. One for intellectual functions and the other for the spiritual counterparting activities of the thought adjuster.
You see what I was saying about this may be why they call it the three brains. They still have two hemispheres, but they have a subbrain that's involved with the more spiritual, and then they still have the autonomic nervous system. So
Mhm.
that would make it a three brain. So they're really considering, if that's the case, it makes me think they're considering the two hemisphere type of brain as one brain, and then your cerebral cortex as the other part of the brain, the subbrain.
Yeah,
You see what I'm
true.
saying? I mean,
That's
that
and in the three-part brain, they would consider like cerebral cortex is one, left brain is two, right brain is three.
right,
Right.
Okay.
right. So, I mean, that's the way I could interpret it. There's lots of there's variations on that you could come up with. And who knows who would be right or wrong, if any of us were right or wrong, so they don't go into great detail. Gary, would you take the next one?
While the terrestrial attainments of the one brain races are slightly limited in comparison with the two brain orders, the older planets of the three brain group exhibit civilizations that would astonish Urantians, and which would somewhat shame yours by comparison. In mechanical development and material civilization, even in intellectual progress, the two brain mortal worlds are able to equal the three brained spheres. But in the higher control of mind and development of
Intellectual.
thank you, and spiritual respiration, you are somewhat inferior.
Oh, thanks. Y'all don't quite have it there, right? They don't pull any punches, do they? Okay,
I
so
just have one thing to say, up your brain too,
yeah. Well, the three brains apparently are higher intelligently than we are, and they develop things faster, but we can catch up to them. It just takes, we're a little slower. That's all. It takes us a
Have
little
you thought
longer.
about it in, I think the previous lesson we had, or the one before, it said that civilizations were not considered civilized and they were considered barbaric until women regained equal rights with men.
Yes, that's
If you
true.
think about our world, like in the United States,
Yeah,
that has happened is in World War II,
yeah,
basically, okay, when women went to the factories, etc.
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
look
that's
at,
when it started, but that's when it started developing, Gary, but it's still not 100% yet.
No.
oh no, but you look
No,
at some of the
no,
China, say, for
yeah,
instance, the abortion rate for children. There's a lot more women children being aborted than as opposed to male.
yeah.
It's still going on. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff going on in Africa similarly. So we can think how smart we are, but I would say on the universal platform of the world, we're looking at barely we're just we could still be considered barbarians, even
Oh,
though our
yeah. I,
egos
I
say
think we
no.
are. And I really believe it'll take several thousand years to get us to the point where we really treat other races and women, everything as equals. You can say and sing the song and claim you have this, but it really is an action. You know how your attitude about everything is how you react to other people, what kind of actions you take to make sure that things are equal and that sort of thing. Jesus started this back 2,000 years ago. Remember when he
Hmm.
started the women's corps and he ordained the women's corps? He wanted to start getting the women in the proper place 2,000 years ago. And then Paul comes along and kind of upsets the apple cart, right? And puts everything back the way it was because he was a Jew, and that's the way the Jewish people felt about their women. They treated them like cattle, really. And it's that way in many parts of the world right now, and it still has not been 100% straightened up, and it may take us 1,000 years to eventually straighten it up, but we won't be considered past being barbarians until we get to that point, right? May take a material son or daughter to come for us to do that, someone to teach us. We need another Adam and Eve. All right. Okay, let me take the next one. This is the one we just read. All such comparative estimates concerning the intellectual progress or the spiritual attainment of any world or group of worlds should, in fairness, recognize planetary age. Very much depends on age. The help of the biologic uplifters and the subsequent missions of the various orders of divine sons. What did I just say? Right?
Right.
It might take a divine son or a material son or daughter to straighten us out. That would
I
probably
think he's
help.
coming soon the way things are going.
That's right. Now my wife.
While the three brain peoples are capable of a slightly higher planetary evolution than either the one or two brain orders, all have the same type of life plasm and carry on planetary activities in very similar ways, much as do human beings on Urantia. These three types of mortals are distributed throughout the worlds of the local systems. In the majority of cases, planetary conditions had very little to do with the decisions of the life carriers to project these varied orders of mortals on the different worlds. It is a prerogative of the life carriers, thus, to plan and execute.
So if you want to blame somebody,
Yeah,
blame the
there
life
you go.
carriers. Right? Because they make the decision on what kind of beings we're going to be. Okay. So,
Roger,
yes.
I am curious. Do you think our planet could receive another material son daughter?
A new Adam and
That
Eve.
would
Yes, I
help.
believe it could happen. I do. I very much do. The two reasons, Rodney. Number one is the Adam and Eve, the planetary sons and daughters, were supposed to be a biological uplifting of the races. Okay, that could still happen if Adam and Eve came to this planet and they had millions of kids, because they're going to be here over hundreds of thousands of years, right? Their children would eventually start mixing with the current races of Urantia, and that would give us what? Another biological uplift. And if they did that, it would do several things. Number one, it would help us get rid of most of the disease. It would improve our humor. It would improve our intellectual standing, make us more intelligent. All these things could still happen if we had another Adam and Eve. Now, another possibility is this, that a magisterial son would come and they would uplift us just spiritually. Okay. And if that happened, because we would be on a higher spiritual plane of existence, we would learn to love one another. We would enact it, the concept of Jesus, the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. And if we did that, because our whole life would be based on love and spiritual attributes, then that would kick us into a higher form of living. Okay. So you wouldn't have certain things like the problem we have with government and that sort of thing, because if you loved one another, like Jesus talked about, then not only would the world change socially, but everything about the world, economically, politically, everything would change and we'd get rid of war. And there's certain things we wouldn't do anymore, right?
So most planets, I mean, almost every one of them keep an Adam and Eve until the planet goes into light and life.
That's right. A normal planet has an Adam and Eve who is the physical head of the planet from the time they arrive till the time we reach light and life. And they're our teachers. Their sons and daughters are our teachers. Okay. And we don't have that, do we? So we run around blindly trying to figure out how to socialize ourselves, how to create, fix things like the disease processes and that sort of thing on our planet, where Adam and Eve would help us work out all these issues. Okay. We definitely wouldn't be in the political mess we are right now, because Adam and Eve would be the quote physical head of the planet, almost like a king and queen, but they would assign people to run the countries and that sort of thing. And there wouldn't be any of this putting money into politics and buying people off and all this other stuff. Why? Because they would run it like the celestial government is run, and that doesn't happen in the celestial government. Okay. So it would improve the planet all the way around. In the meantime, we have to flail around and try how to figure it out ourselves and try to make changes so that we can make those same things different than they are right now, right? Make them better and better and better. And
I think I have something to say.
Go ahead.
I think with Adam and Eve, with the way what happened with them, okay, she had an affair with someone else, which totally blew the whole family, the whole process about it, and that is still what's going on now, even though women are trying to establish, a higher level of comprehension and power, actually, so I think that was just 2,000 years that has gone by, and we're still working through that one. 37,000 since Adam and Eve, yeah. So.
You got to remember too that all these problems we have, like with abortion and birth control and things like that, Eve was responsible for teaching us these things.
Yeah.
And so we didn't get any instruction, so we kind of went at everything ourselves. And you know how human beings are. You put one human beings in the mix, and you usually mess things up, right? So these problems we have, a lot of these problems we have, we would not have had if we were taught properly 37,000 years ago. These things should have been taken care of, right? So now we're trying to figure it out as a social issue between each other. And there's a lot of things involved in all of this. There's a lot of things involved in birth control and controlling the population and abortion and all these other things, which if we would have been taught properly, would not be a spiritual issue. Okay.
Right.
And that's what we tried to make all this stuff as a spiritual issue. And in reality, it was a social issue and a family issue, which should have been handled by Adam and Eve. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
It's an understanding. It's what
Yeah.
we're talking about here, right? Okay, let's go on with the three orders. Rodney, I think you're next.
Uh, these three orders stand on an equal footing in the ascension career. Each must traverse the same intellectual skill of development, and each must master the same spiritual test of progression. The system administration and the constellation over control of these different worlds are uniformly free from discrimination. Even the regimes of the planetary princes are identical.
Okay, y'all see a problem right there, right off the bat? Our planetary prince system was interrupted by the Lucifer rebellion, right?
Sure.
So normally a planetary prince has physical representation on the planet. That's what Dalmatia was about and the Kalagasha 100. So since we had 60 out of the Kalagasha 100 that rebelled, it upset the planetary regime of the planetary prince. So we no longer have a physical representation of the government any longer on the planet. You see what I'm saying? Our physical representation on the planet is invisible to us. We can't see them, can we? Can't see the midwayers. We can't see the angels. We can't see the planetary prince. We couldn't see anybody that would have been left of the staff because they were all removed because of the rebellion. So we have no planetary government that's physical to us that we could see on TV or wherever that runs the planet. Okay, even though they're there, we have a planetary prince, right? A vicegerent planetary prince. He's got 12 advisors. All the angels are involved, but we don't see any of this, right? So we can't copy the government of the universe in a physical human standpoint because we have no reference to do that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
We're winging it.
We're winging
See what
it.
that means? We
What's
have
that?
an excuse.
We don't have an excuse.
Yes,
we
we
have
do.
we have
It's an understanding.
it's an understanding. You know, that I was talking to Diane when we were having a little supper a while ago, and the point is this: just because you don't have the benefits of visible beings, we have a benefit of a revelation. Do y'all realize that?
That's right.
The benefit we have of this revelation tries to lead us in the proper way of everything, from family life, political life, social life, religious life. All these things are taught to us in the book. We just have to read it.
It's our
Okay.
physical guide.
It's our physical guide. We don't have people, but we have the book. All right. So you could say we could be ruled by the book. Really, because we have what? We have government on a neighboring planet that spells out how a planet close to us do the same things we are trying to do on this planet and how they did it. Okay, so it gives us an example to work from. The trick is we have to use what we have. And because of this lack of knowledge, lack of understanding, lack of interest is the big thing in the book, then we're at a disadvantage at this point in time. Now, the beings that revealed the book to us are confident that the earth will be eventually ruled by what's in this book. Okay. It will eventually spread. It's just that we in this generation are unfortunate enough to be the ones that's just beginning the flow of information. Okay, and that's why they felt it was so important to get teachers trained. You know, in 1955, when they gave him the book, they said the most important thing that the humans on this planet could do is start study groups, just like we're doing here, so that that individuals can be trained as teachers to teach other people, right? And that's what we do.
Isn't that what Jesus's church was formerly? I mean, there was
Supposed
no,
to
in
do.
Jesus's time, there was no temples, no Christian temples, there was no Christian structures.
They
It was
started from scratch. That's right.
people meeting and talking, and this is, I physically think that when you start building structures and stuff like that, you dilute the word, you
Uh-huh.
put a material presence on it, and you start to walk away from the lesson.
You do, Gary, and a perfect example of that is the church in Philadelphia. Okay. The church in Philadelphia was teaching the principles of Jesus. Okay. The fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. Paul comes along and Peter keeps giving in to Paul because Paul inserts his theology into the Christian religion. And so we went from a Jesusonian religion, which is a religion of Jesus, to a religion about Jesus, which is what ended up becoming the Christian church. Okay. And the Christian church followed the teachings of Paul. Peter just gave in to Paul because he wanted the church to spread. He really wanted the church to spread, and it did. But Peter started changing the message on what? Pentecost. Remember that from the paper on Pentecost? I keep thinking what we just studied it. It's because I just re-recorded the thing not long ago. So I thought, yeah, we talked about that. We didn't talk about that, did we? But at Pentecost, the very first thing it says that Peter immediately started to change the gospel of Jesus on the night of Pentecost and changed it from the gospel of Jesus to a gospel about Jesus, right? And then Paul comes along and comes up with the sacrificial lamb thing, that Jesus was the final sacrifice. Fit right in, right? And that's how we got in the mess we got right now. Okay. This stuff is important. The stuff in the Bible is all important, but you have to understand the context of where it came from. The Bible was written by men during the times that they felt like they had to write it down because the stories of Jesus was dying away, right? So that's how we got the New Testament. And when you realize that, and you realize what a blessing it is for us to get a new, if you could say, this is the New Testament of Jesus, that which is in the book, the life and Christ of Jesus and the seven bestowals. It gives us all the information that was already out there, and yet it gives us all the lost information to straighten it out, right? It does. And I guarantee y'all, probably before I die, you'll see my picture on YouTube somewhere, and you'll have these Baptist preachers getting up and saying, this guy is a false prophet. I guarantee you. They do it to other preachers that don't teach the sacrificial lamb concept. They do it all the time. Say that these people are false teachers. It's not true. They're all teachers. They're all preachers. And all religions are of something of benefit to mankind. None of them are not benefit of mankind. If they believe in God the Father, all of them benefit mankind. Okay? I don't care what anybody says. And you can say whatever you want to about me. I'm going to go to my grave teaching this book, I guarantee you. So that's the way it is. Somebody will play my tapes one of these days when I'm well dead and gone and say, maybe this guy wasn't so stupid after all. You know, we'll see. Okay. Let's go on to the next one. Rodney, I think you're up again.
Okay. These three orders stand on equal footing. Did I read this?
Yes.
Did you already read this? Okay. Did we talk about this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And print it. Yeah, we did. Okay, I'm sorry, y'all. So you just read then, Rodney, that means Jane's up.
No, did you read, Rodney?
Yes,
Mhm.
the last one.
The last
Okay.
one.
3. Spirit reception series. There are 3 groups of mind design as related to contact with spirit affairs. This classification does not refer to the 1, 2, and 3 brain orders of mortals. It refers primarily to gland chemistry, more particularly to the organization of certain glands comparable to the pituitary bodies. The races on some worlds have 1 gland, on other 2, as do Urantia, while on still on other spheres, the races have 3 of these unique bodies. The inherent imagination and spiritual receptivity is definitely influenced by this differential chemical endowment.
Hmm.
We do have the
Okay.
pituitary gland here, but inactive.
Huh? The
We do
pituitary,
have, it's
yeah,
inactive.
yeah, well, it's underneath the brain. Actually, if you take your
Oh,
fingers and stick right here behind your ear, right at the bottom of your ears, that's what you call your atlas. And just behind that is where the 2 pituitary bodies stick down underneath the brain.
And they don't know what they're for.
Well, they know it releases certain hormones and that sort of thing. But the interesting part of this is this. These glands have much to do with the spiritual reception, and it makes you wonder if that is not where the dwelling place of the
Thought adjuster.
personality or the thought adjuster is, right?
yeah.
It'll be a safe
Yeah.
place.
Yeah, because it's really protected greatly by the human skull and everything that's around it. But they're 2
Yeah.
little bodies that just have a little connection that comes right out of the base of the brain.
You know,
So,
it also would explain why man does not know much about the pituitary gland
yeah,
for the simple reason we're experimenting or trying to function on the physical side, and the pituitary gland would be more on the spiritual side. And
yes,
it's kind of like a wasteland there.
yeah. Well, that in the, we don't realize how glandular physiology affects our physical being so much. You want to see that in action. Look at a woman when she goes into menopause. Okay. It plays havoc with her hormonal system, right? And many times women have to go on medications to balance themselves out because of this haywire connection with the glandular system. Okay. As they get older. And with men, it's really strange because the prostate has a lot to do with men, and it releasing testosterone, that sort of thing. And how many times have you heard of men dying of testicular cancer, right?
Yeah.
It's like the number 3 cause of death for men. So it's very interesting how everything is involved in keeping us alive. All right. Too much information. Okay, let's go on. Gary, would you did you just read?
No, I
No,
did.
Diane, Jan
Okay,
just
Gary,
did.
would you take the next one?
On the spiritual reception types, of the spiritual reception types, 65% are of the second group, like the Urantia races. 20% are of the first type, naturally less receptive, while 23% are more spiritually inclined during terrestrial life. But such distinctions do not survive natural death. All of these racial differences pertain only to life in the flesh. Well, that's nice.
Yeah, isn't it interesting how as soon as we get to the mansion rules, they straighten all this out, right? So
I was going to wear a loin cloth, and I passed over just to mess with them.
I don't think they'd care.
It won't make any
It wouldn't make any difference. Okay, so this is the percentages, which tells us that Once you pass this world, it don't mean a thing, right? When you get to the mansion worlds. Okay. 4, planetary mortal epochs. This is really important. This classification recognizes the succession of temporal dispensations as they affect man's terrestrial status and his reception of celestial ministry. What are they talking about here? Planetary mortal epochs is what happens as we progress from barbarians, right when the Caligaster 100 shows up, until we get the next epical revolution, which is Adam and Eve, right? Normally, the next one after Adam and Eve would be a magisterial son, right? And then eventually a Trinity teacher son. But what they're talking about here is during these period of times, or this period of time in these mortal epochs, the way that we are affected individually is a great influence on how we perceive spiritual things. Okay, so if you live back in the time of the Caligaster 100, your concept of spiritual things and spiritual values and how they interact in your life is going to be much different than those in the period of Adam and Eve. And why would that be? Because you would have Adam and Eve teaching you basic things that would make you more spiritual as we progress. Now, you see how the default of Adam and Eve disrupted this? So if we would have had Adam and Eve that kept living, our spiritual life at this point would probably been on a much, much higher level, right? Because we would have been prepared for Jesus when he came on his bestowal mission, and he would have been accepted much greater. Now, Melchizedek came in between and tried to bring us up to speed on things, didn't he? Okay, that's where most every religion that has anything to do with God, almost all of it came from the teachings of Melchizedek and his people he sent out to train people.
From Salem.
Salem, right? That's why Salem became Jerusalem, right? Same location. Okay. Now, the interesting part is this. He tried to bring us up to snuff, but he could only do so much in 99 years. But then Jesus came, and because of the stupidity, I can't think of another word, of the people of that time, didn't recognize him as the Son of God, right? If they would have, this world would have been a totally different place to live in right now, right? Because we would have been spiritual oriented beings, and we're not in the least, hardly. So now we've gone through this materialistic age, or the mechanical age, and we're fixing to step into an age of AI, right? Computers, everything's run by computers. People are trying to sell us the point that the computers are better than human brains. They're not people. And so we're going through this big change in this particular period of time. And instead of embracing spirituality, what are we doing? We're embracing the internet. And you know that the internet is full of evil things, terrible things, in essence, too much information because we can't process it fast enough. Right? That's where it boils down to.
But that wouldn't be considered an epic.
That's not considered an epic. No, but we're moving through these things to get to a point where we can wake up spiritually. Okay? That's what the point of this is. So when we get past all this AI stuff and we get used to computers a little bit more, another 20 years, we may be preparing ourselves for a spiritual awakening in this planet like no one's ever seen before. Okay, that's my point. It may be preparing us for the next age, which be the age of the magisterial son, right? May very well be preparing us for it. So if we get to stay around long enough, will we get to see it or not? I don't know. I really don't. You know, we'll probably all be gone, sitting in the mansion worlds and laughing about it all, saying, "Hey, we didn't have to go through that part of it, did we?" Okay, dear. I think you're up.
Okay. Life is initiate. Huh?
The other day,
I think he was talking to me.
Is that the other Tuesday or Thursday?
It's 6:59.
Oh,
is it?
oh, is
Oh,
it?
Lord.
Okay.
I'll just keep teaching y'all.
Do you want me to read, honey, or just leave it alone?
No, that is not this way.
Okay. All right.
We'll take
Okay, I got out of that one. Thank you, Rodney.
You're muted, Roger.
I said, hopefully we'll get on the right night next time too. On the right paper. You know, doing different papers on different nights is a little
Yeah.
confusing. Yeah, sometimes keeping
You
our
know,
brain.
When we get through this series, I'd like to go back to being consecutive because my feeble brain gets messed up.
Well, actually, we're going to keep going consecutive on Tuesday night, all the way we have been. Okay, and we'll keep going through the papers. After we finish Thursday, though, I'm going to start on the Master Universe stuff, and then go into the forward because I need to just redo a lot of stuff in both of those. So, and I want to teach it to y'all before I die. So this is, if I don't do it now, I may not get another opportunity.
Roger, you're in the same boat I am.
We're getting too old. Yeah. Yeah, we're just
We've got all the time in the world until God says, whoa.
That's it. That's
And that's
exactly
just the
right.
way it is, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's where we are right now. I am going to go back to I've got a surprise for y'all when we do the universe stuff, because I discovered something which I wanted to share with y'all on the paper. When I did the paper for reading the Urantia book on the life of Christ, I had to go through the trip to Rome, paper 130,
Correct.
about 3 times, because I discovered some stuff that should have been highlighted and read and it wasn't. So in doing that, I really got to study that paper extensively. And there's some teachings of Jesus about universe reality in paper 130, believe it or not. And so what I did is I went through the 130 and added the teachings of Jesus in our universe reality series. Okay, so when we go through the universe reality series, I'm going to go through all the teachings out of paper 130 of Jesus relating to the universe reality series. And when I do, you're going to see the light's going to come on with y'all, and you're going to go, oh my gosh, Jesus taught universe reality. You know, one of the things he said in the 7th section of that is the 7 levels of the universe and the 7 dimensions that human beings go through to get to paradise.
What can you define universe reality?
Yes, universe reality is all that is, has, was, is, and is to be in existence. That's the best way I can explain it. The universe reality chart by Don Estes breaks down everything from the beginning of everything to the end of everything. Okay, that's why he called it the universe reality chart. It's a great chart. Don Estes, you can get it online. They still sell them. So I bought one a long time ago and had it blown up big as a room. And that's what we taught over at Rodney's house originally. So we went by that chart to teach the whole concept of God the Father, the absolutes, everything having to do with the reality of the universe. And the interesting part is in finding this stuff in the life of Jesus, I thought this needs to be plugged into this same teaching so that we realize what we're learning is not just what's in the book. It's what Jesus actually taught people when he was still on the planet. So if it's important to Jesus, should it be important to us?
Yeah.
I think so, right? I really think so. And the more of Jesus's teachings we can bring into our classes, the more better off we are, right? Go
Mhm.
better, as they say, right? So that's what we're going to do. And that's coming in 3 or 4 weeks. I don't know how long it's going to take to finish this last paper we're working on, the soul. So when we get done with that, we'll step into that. And I think if y'all stick with me and go through this class again, you will not be sorry, because I'm going to be teaching things I didn't teach on the first time through. Okay. Because the first time through, I looked at a couple of videos. It was awful. I mean, the videos were awful. The sound was awful. I mean, the stuff I taught was good, but you have to sit through all this awfulness to absorb
Roger,
it. Yeah. Yeah.
you have evolved. You have
I have
gotten
evolved.
better.
I have.
Every
Yeah.
time a person goes back and sees where they were 10, 20 years ago, they're ashamed.
Yeah.
And you should
Yeah.
not be. You should be
Well, I'm not
proud that
ashamed.
you've gone that far and you didn't even realize you was growing.
No, I did. The stuff I know now, I didn't know 11 years ago when I taught
Yeah.
it.
So you was going down the road with blinders.
Yeah. Yeah. We all do that in life, right? We learn from our experiences. Okay. Let me get off of here so that people can go eat their supper.
Thank
and
you,
all that stuff.
everyone. See you Thursday.
Yeah, see you Thursday. That's
Romanos and all that
See you
stuff.
Thursday.
All right, y'all. See you
Love you.
then. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody. Good night.